Circus freak shows were once the world's most famous spectacles. But what if the freaks were actually extraordinary people with exceptional abilities and rare conditions? From the Elephant Man, Joseph Merrick, to the Turtle Boy, George Williams, their lives were filled with awe and heartbreak. Today, we uncover the 15 real circus freaks you won't believe existed and their true stories. Stories that will not only surprise you, but stay with you forever. Let's start off with number 15, the Lucases, family of albinos. They were from France, pale skin, soft features, light hair, and pink eyes, real people with a rare condition. But when P.T. Barnum found them in Amsterdam in 1857, he rewrote their story in ways you will die from laughing. This guy claimed they were Negroes from Madagascar who slept with their eyes open. Then he gave them the name the wonderful Eliophobus family, of course, a made-up word meant to sound exotic. And people believed it. They always did. Barnum brought them to New York, put them in his American Museum, and the crowds poured in. For 40 years, the Lucases toured, working with Barnum, with W. Coles, with the Lemon Brothers. They became a fixture of the traveling spectacle. When Antoinette passed, her brother Rudolph kept going, playing violin in vaudeville alone until he died in Kansas City in 1909. Their lives were never fully their own, but somehow they lived. Behind the manufactured myth and painted posters was a beautiful family who lived on stage so others could look away. Number 14, Carrie Akers, the Warthog. Carrie Akers stood just 3 feet tall and weighed over 300 pounds. Her body didn't follow the normal rules. Neither did she. Brought into P.T. Barnum's show in the late 1880s as a dwarf fat lady, she wasn't there to be quiet, grateful, or easy to manage. She clashed with everyone, even Barnum. She yelled when she felt disrespected, pushed back when people crossed her, and in the end, they gave her the cruelest nickname, the Warthog. Not because of how she looked, but because she refused to play nice. Most sideshow performers were painted as curiosities. Carrie became a warning. She only lasted a couple of years in the spotlight, but her name still floats in the history of that era. Not as a joke and not even as a villain, but as someone whose rage was too loud to be forgotten. She never asked to be pitied. She demanded to be heard. Number 13, Captain Fred Walters, the Blue Man. Fred Walters served in the British Army. He followed orders, kept his uniform neat, and did what he was told, even when it came to medicine. A doctor prescribed him a compound containing silver to manage a nerve condition, and he took it as instructed without a second thought. Over time, his skin began to change. Slowly, it turned blue. Like for real. By 1891, his condition was permanent. With little else to offer the world, Walters joined the American sideshow circuit. His blue skin made him a spectacle, something people paid to stare at, laugh at, or whisper about. He leaned into the stage name, the Blue Man, even as the silver he ingested kept poisoning him from the inside. He stayed on the circuit for over 3 decades, growing darker, growing sicker, but still performing. In 1923, the silver finally reached his heart. He died alone, far from home, and without ceremony. They said he died for his art, but really, he died for survival. Number 12, Willie Popeye Ingram. He was born in Decatur, Alabama, around 1930, and William Ingram discovered at just 4 years old that his eyes could push forward, nearly an inch outside the sockets. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't painless. But it was different enough to turn into a livelihood. He joined Walter L. Wanis and Sons, a traveling sideshow that took him from town to town, fairground to fairground. What people felt when they saw him, shock, awe, and discomfort, never quite matched what he carried. He made it into Ripley's Believe It or Not, tabloid spreads, and even a role in the 1974 cult horror film, The Freakmaker. But behind the stares and headlines was a man navigating the tension between being seen and being watched. Willie turned a physical anomaly into something unforgettable. He lived with what others only gawked at, not because he wanted the attention or money, but because it gave him a place in a world that didn't offer many. Number 11. Joe the Leopard Boy. Well, his real name was A.E. Bishel. He was African American, born in 1869, and lived with a rare condition called leukoderma. It marked his skin in uneven patches, some dark, some pale, like the spots on a leopard. He wasn't the only one called Leopard Boy, but he was among the earliest and most widely exhibited. P.T. Barnum gave him the name and the costume. Crowds gave him the stares. Over time, he left Barnum and began performing in dime museums, quiet places where the stories mattered less than the stares. By then, the name had stuck. They didn't ask for his real one. They rarely did. In 1909, he reportedly died after falling into an open trapdoor backstage. 40 years old, no obituary, no public goodbye, just gone. His skin may have made him visible, but it never made him seen. Like so many others in that era, he existed in the space between curiosity and humanity and rarely crossed over. Number 10. Alexander Montague, the living skeleton. He stepped onto the stage in the 1850s, all bone and quiet motion. Alexander was one of P.T. Barnum's famed living skeletons. He weighed just 54 pounds. His chest was 4 inches thick. His wrists were the size of a man's thumb. There was no trick. There were no padded clothes. He was simply thin in a way the world didn't understand. And so, they stared. Montague didn't do backflips or fire tricks. He played violin, something soft, something human. His body had failed to hold mass, but not music. He performed throughout the 1860s, always announced as something unexplainable. But what made him unforgettable wasn't just his frame. It was how calmly he held it. He didn't chase shock. He played through it. When his name faded, the imitators stepped in, thinner, louder, more dramatic. But none of them could replace him. Montague didn't just show the world what fragility looked like. He showed that it could hold grace, too. Number 9. John Coffey, the original skeleton dude. John Coffey wasn't born thin. Born in 1852 in Piqua, Ohio, he lived a normal life until nearly 30. Then, slowly, his body began to change. No one knew why. He dropped weight year after year until he weighed less than 70 pounds. Doctors didn't have answers. Coffey had a choice: hide or step into the spotlight. He chose to be seen. First, as the Ohio skeleton, sitting silently in dime museums. But that wasn't enough. He added flair. He dressed sharply, renamed himself the Skeleton Dude, and turned thinness into character. He played the ladies' man, the elegant gent, even staged publicity weddings to fat ladies in every city, always picking his real wife, Mary, in the end. In 1889, he joined Barnum and Bailey, eventually touring across Europe. But by 1905, a spinal injury left him unable to walk. He gained weight. He lost bookings. He tried palm reading. It didn't work. He died broke and forgotten. But he wasn't just thin. He was first. Number 8. Esther Blackman, the Alligator Girl. Born Esther Parnell in 1926, she came into the world with ichthyosis, which is a rare condition that left her skin dry, thick, and scaly, with no hair at all. They called her the Alligator Girl. Her brother Bill had it too, and together, starting in the 1940s, they were displayed as twins in Joe Hilton's Sideshow. It wasn't easy, but it was what they had. In 1947, Esther married Thomas Blackman, a show musician. The two started their own act, and the following year, she gave birth to her first child. By the time she stopped touring in 1982, she had 7 children. She billed herself as the world's strangest mother. But behind the name was someone who made a family despite everything stacked against her. In the 1970s, she even appeared in 2 horror films, The Sentinel and The Mutations, but that was never the headline. Esther wasn't just a performer. She was a mother, a wife, and a real, actual woman who refused to disappear. Number 7. Serpentina, the Serpent Girl. No one remembers her real name for sure. Maybe it was Irene Farrell. What's clear is that by the early 1900s, she was known only as Serpentina, a girl said to have no bones beyond her skull. The story was more myth than science, but what mattered was what the audience believed. Her body bent in impossible ways, twisting and folding like something not entirely human. They said she had to be carried from place to place. Early performances took her to Oakland's Globe Cafe in the 1920s. Later, she appeared in a touring show called the Marine Hippodrome, billed as a sea tiny, a small-scaled sea creature. Posters were often doctored, exaggerated to match the myth. By 1940, she had a spot with Ripley's Believe It or Not, but the truth of her condition remains blurred. Whatever her real name or diagnosis, Serpentina was unique. Number 6. Susan Barton, the Mammoth Lady. She stood still while the sketch artist from Currier and Ives captured her figure. This was 1849, and Susan Barton had just joined P.T. Barnum's American Museum in New York. She wasn't billed as beautiful or witty or musical. She was billed as the Mammoth Lady. At her heaviest, she was said to weigh 579 pounds, with a waistline stretching 7 feet and 3 inches. But her real story, like so many, has faded. There are no interviews, no letters, no trace of how she saw herself in that frame. Only the advertisement survives, the drawing, the label, the number. In Barnum's eyes, she was a prodigy. But Susan's life beyond the stage remains unrecorded. Did she perform by choice? Did she ever wish to be anything other than seen? All we know for certain is that she stood in front of thousands who came to stare. What do you think about her? Number 5. Ada Briggs. Born in Pulaski, New York, Ada Briggs entered the world of dime museums in the 1870s. By the 1880s, she was being marketed with a curious tagline: not just fat, but fat and beautiful. At 5 feet tall and reportedly over 520 pounds, newspapers called her as beautiful as she is big. That made her stand out in a crowded field. In 1890, Pittsburgh's World's Museum billed her as the Fat Beauty. While most plus-sized performers earned around $40 a week, Ada earned $60, and later as much as $75. That was more than many clerks or tradesmen made at the time. Still, within sideshow ranks, fat performers were seen as common, out-earned by rarer anomalies like giants or limbless acts. Even so, Ada held her own. In 1885, she was elected president of a fat lady convention in Baltimore, weighing in at 536 pounds. She was cute. Number 4. May Jo, the three-legged he-she. George Francis Ethinger was born in 1905 with a parasitic twin fused to his body. 3 legs, 3 buttocks, 2 stomachs, 2 kidneys. But that wasn't all. George was born intersex, caught between the categories of male and female. In the world of 20th century America, that was more than rare. It was something people didn't know how to speak about, so they stared instead. Under the stage name May Jo, George toured with Buffalo Bill's Wild West and Pawnee Bill's Far East show, billed as the three-legged he-she. Photographs were sold by the dozen. Crowds gathered. His parents tried to exhibit him locally, but faced resistance. His body, so visibly different, became something to market, first as a child, then into adolescence. Whether he continued performing after that remains unclear. Other names followed: Joe Pearl, Elsie Lynn, Josephine Pearl. made Joe's body blurred lines, but the world around him never learned how to hold complexity without labeling it. What became of him after the fame faded, no one knows. Number 3. Celesta Geyer, Dolly Dimples. She was born Celesta Herman in 1901 and started gaining weight before most children her age had outgrown dolls. By 6th grade, she weighed 150 pounds. By the time she left high school, she was over 300. Her husband had just lost his job when a carnival offered her work. She said yes. The name Dolly Dimples came later, along with Jolly Dolly and the world's most beautiful fat lady. At just 4 feet 11, she eventually weighed 555 pounds. She became a headliner for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey throughout the 1930s and 40s. Then, in 1950, a heart attack nearly killed her. Terrified, she cut her diet to baby food and lost 443 pounds in just over a year. She didn't disappear. She adapted. Dolly wrote a diet book, joined lecture circuits, and lived 3 more decades spreading a new kind of message: health, survival, self-respect. In 2014, long after her death, Dolly was inducted into Coney Island's Sideshow Hall of Fame. Number 2. Alzoria Lewis and Johanna Dickens. Alzoria Lewis and Johanna Dickens shared the stage for decades, often introduced as sisters, though they weren't related. Alzoria, born in Brooklyn in 1912, lived with stunted limbs, 6 fingers on each hand, and uneven toes. Crawling on all fours, she was billed under names like Turtle Girl or Walrus Girl, with invented tales of Southern roots masking her true Brooklyn childhood. She married twice, sometimes performing as Alzoria Green. Beside her stood Johanna Dickens, a dwarf born in the 1920s, promoted as the Bear Girl. Together, they embodied the dual nature of sideshows: cruelty dressed as entertainment, fascination wrapped in exploitation. Yet despite how promoters packaged them, both women left an impression that went beyond false labels. From the 1930s through the 1950s, their partnership became part of Coney Island's living memory. Audiences may have come for spectacle, but what lingers is their endurance. Number 1. Tex Madsen, Cinematic Giant. He was called Tex, Big Boy, Sky High, Mr. Longfellow, names stretched to fit the frame of a man who couldn't go unnoticed. Ralph Earl Madsen stood 7 feet 6 inches tall and was born in 1897, not in Texas as claimed by many people, but in Nebraska. Still, he worked ranches like a native, roping cattle and riding horses long before sideshows came calling. His size made him a curiosity, but it was his calm, grounded presence that made him memorable. He traveled with fairs, worked stages, and later found his way to film, appearing in movies like 3-Ring Marriage, The Sideshow, Mama's Little Pirate, and The Mighty Barnum. Some believe he even walked through a scene in At the Circus with the Marx Brothers. No matter where you saw him, on a movie screen, on a midway, or in a photograph, Madsen always stood out, not just for how tall he was, but for the way he carried a life too often reduced to a headline. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you very soon.